Hello everyone. Once again, I'm back with my new video on The Face of It, a play written by Susan Hill. In this video, I will be discussing about the author, character sketches of Mr. Lamb and Derry, theme, significance of the title, and detailed summary of the play on The Face of It. So let's get started. About the author, Susan Hill was born on the coast of North Yorkshire, England in the middle of World War II. She wrote her first novel, The Enclosure, before she graduated from King's College London. In 1975, she married Stanley Wells, a Shakespeare scholar. Hill is best known for her gothic ghost stories and crime novels, but she has also written plays, non-fiction, and children's stories. Her most popular works are The Woman in Black, The Mist and the Mirror, and I Am the King of the Castle. She has won numerous literary honors including the Somerset Maugham Award. In 2012, Hill was appointed by the Queen as Commander of the Order of the British Empire for her services to literature. The play On the Face of It deals with loss and sense of isolation and how an individual should deal with it. One must brave every situation in one's life and accept whatever comes one's way with aplomb, like Mr. Lamb does. Tarek, a young lad of 14, was sinking in the abyss of despair and frustration and would have doomed himself in mental desolation had he not met Mr. Lamb, a physically challenged old man who has positive outlook and who is ever ready to share his experiences with others and empower them to live life fully. Derry disliked everyone, but Mr. Lamb changed his pessimistic attitude towards life. Let me tell you about the setting now. On the Face of It is probably set in rural England, sometime around the time 1975. The only specific historical event mentioned in the play is the war, World War II, during which Mr. Lamb had his leg blown off by a bomb. Let me tell you about the characters in the play, Mr. Lamb and Derry. Mr. Lamb is an old man with a tin leg, lonely, craved for company and acceptance, jovial, optimistic, nature lover, social, outgoing, helpful, sensitive, independent, didn't mind children calling him Lemmy Lamb. And Derry, he's a boy of 14 with a burnt face, loner, pessimist, suffered from severe negative complexes, withdrawn and introvert, low in confidence, indulges in self-pity, suspicious of intent of others. Detailed character sketches are explained in the latter half of the video, so do watch the video till the end. Message: the play deals with the problem of the disabled people and depicts that merely the encouraging words may change our tensed feelings. It is for us to see and understand life in every creature. It does not matter what we look like, but it matters how we can uplift a disabled person. It is not the actual pain or inconvenience caused by a physical impairment that troubles a disabled man, but the behavior of the people around him. People discard him as useless limb and refuse to accept him in the mainstream of life. So he feels alienated from society and wants to live in seclusion. The play On the Face of It is divided into 3 scenes, with the first one being the longest, as it is here that Derry, the lad of 14, undergoes a metamorphosis. Scene 1, Mr. Lamb's garden. Derry encounters Mr. Lamb. The first scene is located in Mr. Lamb's garden. There is an occasional sound of bird song and of tree leaves rustling. Derry's footsteps are heard as he walks slowly and hesitantly through the long grass. He has entered the garden thinking it to be empty, but is startled by Mr. Lamb's advice, "Mind the apples." The young boy is confused and also feels guilty because he had entered the garden out of curiosity but feels like having got caught by Mr. Lamb. Consequently, he is quite embarrassed and wants to go home. Mr. Lamb asks Derry to mind the apples. Derry inquires about the person. Mr. Lamb gives his name and again asks him to mind the apples. He adds that those are crab apples. They have been blown down from the tree by the wind and are lying in the long grass. The boy could step on one of them and fall. Derry explains that he didn't know that someone was present in the garden. He thought it to be an empty, and even the house seemed empty to him. Mr. Lamb tried to comfort him by saying that the house was empty as he was out in the garden. Mr. Lamb reassures him that he should not feel disturbed on his account. He doesn't mind who comes into the garden. The gate is always open for people. It was only Derry who jumped the wall. Derry got angry for being pointed at like that. He also clarifies that he had not come to steal anything from there. Mr. Lamb agreed by saying that at many times apples had been stolen by young boys and that Derry was not so young. But still, Derry wanted to leave. Mr. Lamb told him not to be afraid of him and asked him to stay there for a while. Mr. Lamb does not know that Derry is a complex-ridden boy, so he's surprised when Derry reacts arrogantly to the word afraid. Derry tells Mr. Lamb that it is people who are afraid as he has ugly face, one side of which got burned due to acid. He asks Mr. Lamb to look at him, and after seeing his face, he might think that he is the most frightful and ugliest thing. Derry says that when he looks in the mirror and sees his face, he is afraid of it. Mr. Lamb reacts quite unexpectedly to this and remains cool. Mr. Lamb makes a guess. Perhaps the boy got burned in a fire. Derry says that he got acid down that side of his face and it burned it all away. He tells Derry that he is going to make jelly out of the ripe apples, but Derry does not like this change of topic. Mr. Lamb tells Derry that he could help him. Derry asks him what he has changed the subject for. He says that the old man does not ask him as he is afraid to do so. Mr. Lamb tries to build up boy's confidence by telling him that he loves all creatures made by God and that nothing in the world is so worthless that it deserves to be considered as trash. The old man says he is interested in everybody and anything made by God, even grass, rubbish, weeds, flowers, and fruits. At this stage, Mr. Lamb tells him about his handicap. He has a tin leg as the real one had got blown off in war. The children tease him by calling him Lamey Lamb, but he does not mind it. Derry says that people talk about people who are in pain and never cry or complain and don't feel sorry for themselves. People try to console people suffering from physical impairment by asking them to think of all those people worse off than them. They might have been blinded, or born deaf, or have to live in a wheelchair, or be insane and dribble. But all this will not change his face. Even strangers call him terrible. He advises Derry to ignore people's comments in a similar way. Derry is still bursting with anger against this world and is critical of his mother too, as she kisses him only on the good side of the face. Mr. Lamb tries to deal with the negative attitude of this young boy in a positive way and advises him to think of the beautiful objects in the world. Derry feels interested in the unusual conversation and ideas of Mr. Lamb. However, bitterness once again takes the better of Derry as he is reminded of the negative comments of the people about him, to which Mr. Lamb asked meaningfully, "So you believe everything you hear then?" indirectly advising him to hear only those things that are worth listening to. Meanwhile, Mr. Lamb does not forget the task before him and thinks of his beehive and the musically humming bees. Realizing that Derry is interested in what he says, Mr. Lamb narrates the incident of a timid man who refused to come out of his house lest he should meet some fatal accident, but he died in his room itself as a picture fell off the wall on his head and killed him. Through this story, Mr. Lamb wants to convey the thought that one cannot change one's destiny. The story makes Derry laugh heartily. From then on, his attitude towards Mr. Lamb in particular and in life in general starts taking a U-turn. He wants to come there again. He thinks that the other friends of Mr. Lamb might go away if he came. Mr. Lamb assures him that people are not afraid of him because he is not afraid of them. Derry says that the old man said peculiar things. Then he asks what he does all day. Mr. Lamb replies that he sits in the sun, He reads books. His house is full of books. His house has no curtains as he does not like shutting things out. He likes the light and the darkness. He hears the wind from the window. Derry too hears the sound of rain on the roof when it is raining. Mr. Lamb observes that if he hears things, he is not lost. There is still hope. Then Derry recollects the opinion of his family members about him and is reminded of their pitying attitude towards him. Mr. Lamb has an encouraging word for every pessimistic observation of Derry. He reminds Derry of positive things he has, like strong legs, eyes, ears, tongue, and brain, etc., and advises him to set his mind to things in order to be better than all the rest. Words of wisdom continue to flow from Mr. Lamb, and he tells Derek he has hundreds of friends. The gate is always open. Kids come for the apples, pears, and for toffees. He tells him that it is not necessary to be acquainted with one in order to be one's friend. Even if Derry might never see him again, Mr. Lamb would be still his friend. He also tells him about the importance of people and that hating others is bad. It harms more than any bottle of acid. He advises Derry to love all humankind as hatred corrodes us and hurts more than acid. Derry's problem was that he was over-obsessed with himself. But now, for the first time, he talks about Lamb and his handicap. He asks Lamb what would happen if he were on his own and fell from a ladder and broke his neck. He would lie on the grass and perhaps die. Lamb, who has faith in destiny, gives a cryptic answer, I could. Derry knows that his presence in Lamb's house could help him, but at this stage he is worried about his mother, who must have been waiting for him. With the promise to return soon, Derry leaves for home. At this point, Mr. Lamb talks to himself that boy would not return. They never do. Not them, never do come back. Scene 2, Darry's house. In the second scene, Derry reaches home and tells his mother about his decision to go back to his new mentor. Now back at his house, Derry speaks with his mother. Derry's mother says she has heard rumors about Mr. Lamb, has been warned about him, and she refuses to let Derry go back to his house. Derry describes Lamb as just an old man with a tin leg, and he lives in a huge house without curtains and has a garden. Derry declares that he wants to go back and sit and listen and think because Mr. Lamb talks about things that no one else does. This scene adds an extra layer to the conversation that just took place. Derry's mother has been warned about something regarding Mr. Lamb, but it's never made clear just what this is. It now seems more likely that Lamb doesn't actually have hundreds of friends. He's considered by most to be an eccentric old man who lives alone. Derry, however, is now fully convinced of the connection he felt with Lamb and wants to go back and spend more time with someone who remains open to the world and treats him like a human being. Derry's mother again forbids him from going, and Derry declares that he hates it at home. His mother says she forgives him for saying that since it bound to make him feel and say bad things. Derry says he no longer cares about his face. It is not important. It's what he thinks, feels, sees, hears, and find out that it is important. He is going there to help the old man with crab apples and to look at things and listen. If he doesn't go back there, he will never go anywhere in that world again. He runs out of the house, saying to himself, I want the world. Scene 3, Mr. Lamb's garden. The third and last scene of the play is again located in Mr. Lamb's garden. Garden sounds, the noise of a branch shifting, apples thumping down, the branch shifting again. Back at the garden, Mr. Lamb is on his ladder, shaking a branch of the crab apple tree so that the fruit falls to the ground. Suddenly, his ladder falls back and Lamb crashes to the ground where he lies motionless. This is the hypothetical situation that Derry described earlier. Mr. Lamb could fall off his ladder, and if he were on his own, no one would find him and help him. The question now is whether or not Mr. Lamb really is on his own. If Derry will come back, just then Derry rushes up, stating that he has come back despite Mr. Lamb's doubts. Then he sees Mr. Lamb's body and stops short. He runs through the long grass and says, "I came back, Lammy Lamb. I did come back." But there is no response. He finds Mr. Lamb lying on the grass motionless. Derry kneels by him and weeps. He realizes that he has lost his only friend in this world. The curtain falls. Moral now? The moral of the play is very loud and clear. The physically disabled should focus more on the brighter side of life and not to brood over the shortcomings. The society should accept them as they are and expand their social interactions. In this way, they can fight out the loneliness, depression, and disappointment. On the face of it, portrays characters who have many good reasons to avoid other people, but it also illustrates how human beings long for connections with others and how isolation and alienation lead to great suffering. Alienating others and secluding oneself can be a means of self-preservation, but as the play shows, this isolation only leads to greater unhappiness in the end. Now let's discuss significance of the title. According to the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary, on the face of it is an informal expression used to say that something seems to be good, true, but this opinion may need to be changed when you know more about it. This definition of the expression should leave us in no doubt about the appropriateness of the title. An individual may be quite different from what we think of him or what he or she may apparently appear to be at first glance. There is the imperative need for us to view others by removing our glasses of prejudice, hatred, hearsay, and dislike. On the face of it, Mr. Lamb appears to be mysterious, lamey old man who lives in a house with a huge garden, but in reality he is very kind, generous, loving, and humane. Similarly, although Derry has an ugly-looking scary face, he is a fine lad of 14 with a deep longing for love. There is nothing wrong with Mr. Lamb and Derek. What is wrong is the way people in their lives and around them view and treat them. On the face of it, there is so much of diversity, so many differences and divides between the people and other species of the world. But underneath is a oneness, a sameness. All of them are created by God and all of them need to live and grow together with love and mutual acceptance. As the play progresses, the characters' views about each other and our impression of them changes for the better. Thus, Susan Hill has quite appropriately titled her play On the Face of It. Let's discuss the character sketches of Mr. Lamb and Derry in detail. First, I will be discussing the character sketch of Mr. Lamb. One of the play's two central characters, Mr. Lamb, is an old man and veteran of World War II. In spite of the fact that one of his legs had got blown off during the war, and children sometimes make fun of him by calling him Lammy Lamb, he always maintains a positive attitude towards life and accepts life as it comes without grumbling. Though he lives alone, he keeps himself busy growing crab apples, keeping bees, reading, making toffees and jelly. He is always prepared to overlook the shortcomings and mischief of others. He is a wise and thoughtful soul who enjoys observing, listening, and learning from other people and the natural world. In his conversation with Derry, he expresses a philosophy of openness and non-judgmental connection, and his kindness and sense of the dignity inherent in all people eventually help him break through the boy's wary and defiant exterior. In keeping with this mindset of openness, Mr. Lamb has no curtains on his open windows because he likes to see the light and dark for what it is and to hear the weather outside. Mr. Lamb is gregarious by nature and a downright extrovert who believes in universal brotherhood. He also leaves his garden gate open and states that all are welcome in his garden and home. He says that he has hundreds of friends and that people like to come and go in his home, but it's unclear if this is true or not. Derry suspects that Mr. Lamb is in fact lonely and unhappy, and that no one actually comes to visit him. He has the rare quality of convincing others with sound arguments. A die-hard and almost incorrigible Derek has a turnaround after his encounter with Mr. Lamb. In the face of strong opposition from his mother, the 14-year-old boy rushes back to him, which is something very bold and courageous. In short, Mr. Lamb, despite his handicap, has all the qualities of head and heart that every wise man should emulate. Next, we have character analysis of Derek. The protagonist of the play, Derry or Derek, is a boy of 14 who is a victim of inferiority complex owing to spilling of acid on one side of his face. He always remains conscious of his handicap and is full of bitterness, and had he not met Mr. Lamb, he would have become a total psychological wreck. In the beginning of the play, Derek gives the impression of being a spoilt brat. However, slowly and gradually, Derek's personality traits get unfolded. We learn that most torturous mental and emotional block for Derek results from the excessive importance he gives to the comments of others. Of the accident that left him scarred, all he says is, "I got acid all down the side of my face and it burned it all away. It ate my face up. Because of this, people treat him differently." He complains that others fear and pity him and usually actively avoid him. He bears the grudge against the members of his family also, who instead of encouraging him, always keep on pitying him. This has led Derry to isolate himself and create a tough, reserved exterior. He wants to avoid being hurt, and so he avoids everyone he can, and when he does interact with other people, he is both suspicious and defiant. He has internalized the way others see him and seems to consider himself monstrous because of his disability. However, Derek is a three-dimensional character capable of giving a surprise to others by shedding his negative attitude towards life. Mr. Lamb's cryptic words of wisdom inspired him, and he rushes back to his garden to adopt the positive attitude and path shown by him. With this, we come to the end of our lecture. Like, share and subscribe English Tutorials by Poonam Thakur.